topic is about the implementation of cybersecurity frameworks, specifically in the context of an overall enterprise architecture framework. My name is Doreen Dickman. I'm a pre-sales consultant with Avolution Software. I'm going to kick us off. So taking a look at our agenda for today. First, I'm going to speak a little bit about Avolution and our platform Abacus, which will be showcased today for this topic. Then after that, I'm going to turn it over to Kishan Patel. He's also a pre-sales consultant here at Avolution, and he'll talk about using cybersecurity frameworks in your daily practice, and will offer up some best practices and ideas to help you get started. Then finally, we're going to have a Q&A session. So please, if you would, throughout the webinar, if questions come to mind, use the Zoom Q&A panel to send us your questions. And now let's go ahead and get into it. Avolution have been around in the enterprise architectural realm for over 20 years. With its, so Abacus is our software, and it was built ground up for the purpose of managing enterprise architectures. It has a powerful graph repository, and Abacus works the way that architects work. So whether it's through the management of data in tabular form or the building of diagrams with drag and drop simplicity, you can model and update your architectures in the way that makes sense for you personally. We also have unparalleled support for frameworks, notations, and reference models, and this makes it possible for enterprise architects from all industry sectors to provide high-level intelligence and insights to their stakeholders. Abacus is highly rated. According to the major analyst organizations, we consistently lead the field of software of this class in capability evaluations for EA tools. In fact, we're happy to say that we've just again been ranked as the #1 platform by Gartner, according to its analysis of critical capabilities for EA tools. And for a user base, we have thousands of users in over 100 countries. Our offices are worldwide so that we can support all of our users quite effectively. And then scattered in this placemat are just a few of the quantitative benefits of using Abacus, like improvements in productivity and savings of time and cost. So if we don't already have the pleasure of working with you, I hope this bit of information piques your interest for exploring us through an in-person demo. So without further delay, I can turn this over to Kishan for the main event.
Thank you, Doreen. So first, we're going to start off talking about how the NIST CSF fits into your overall cybersecurity landscape. So here you can see the NIST cybersecurity framework provides high-level guidance that any organization can use to establish and manage a cybersecurity program without prescribing specific controls. So it focuses on how to access and prioritize security functions, but it references existing documents like NIST 853 and COBIT 5 and ISO 27000 for more detail on how to implement specific controls and processes. So your vertical and your industry compliance requirements are largely going to drive the specific controls you need, right? Like NIST 853 and 800-171 for clients dealing with U.S. federal agencies, or PCI for organizations dealing with payments, or HIPAA for those organizations that are dealing in healthcare. So in an enterprise architecture context, NIST CSF provides a strategic cybersecurity governance layer, while things like 853 and ISO are going to serve as those tactical and operational control frameworks. Organizations aligning cybersecurity with EA principles such as TOGAF can use the NIST CSF to establish those overarching cybersecurity objectives, while leveraging detail frameworks like 853 for implementation at a technical level. Integrating your cybersecurity framework and controls with your enterprise architecture practice enhances your organization's ability to manage and adapt to risks at an enterprise level. So using a tool like Abacus powered by a graph database, we can easily create those mappings and connections between our cybersecurity functions and our enterprise architecture artifacts and start drawing analysis and making informed decisions. Here we can see how the NIST frameworks can fit into the overall TOGAF landscape. And you'll see we'll mainly be making connections between those NIST frameworks and things in the information system architecture, technology architecture, and opportunities and solutions phases. So that's not to say that this is a prescriptive mapping, right? So there's going to be high-level concepts like objectives and processes that'll be present in both. But this is more representing the actual components we'll mainly be dealing with. So now we'll look at how we can map the NIST TSF to those different control sets and specific frameworks. So if you choose the NIST CSF, you'll first have to align your organizational objectives to the framework core, which we can see here on the left. The framework core consists of 5 functions, or it consists of 6 functions, which are the 6 basic cybersecurity functions at the highest level. So these functions are further divided into categories, and then those categories are further divided into subcategories. So the categories are just groups of cybersecurity outcomes tied to programmatic needs and particular activities, such as asset management and supply chain risk management, for example. And then those categories are broken out into these different subcategories, which are just going to be outcomes of technical or management activities. And then in this example, you can see how these subcategories are mapped to controls in the 853 framework. So a control can be viewed as descriptions of the safeguards and protection capabilities appropriate for achieving this particular set of security and privacy objectives. And NIST offers informative references to different sets of controls and frameworks that you'll be able to utilize to find those specific mappings from high-level NIST subcategories to those actual controls that you need to apply. So here we can flip over to the NIST website and take a look at some of those different informative references. So you can see we have mappings all the way from CSF to different things like HIPAA, 853, the SCF. There's a wide breadth of mappings between the NIST CSF and other frameworks that we can use available to us, as well as import into Abacus with our flexible meta model approach. So another thing that's available on the NIST website are some examples of community profiles. So these community profiles provide guides for different industries to be able to quick start their CSF function here. Right, so here you can see some different example profiles in the manufacturing industry and election infrastructure, liquefied natural gas. So we're going to be walking through a few of these different examples and swapping back and forth between the examples and Abacus to see how we can actually implement some of these different things that were shown in these profiles. So here you can see a profile for maritime liquid transfer. All of these different profiles are going to follow a similar structure. So just keep in mind that this is just an example. You'll be able to take this and apply this to your specific vertical and your specific industry. And we can see that all of these different profiles start with setting your mission objectives. Right, so NIST kind of has a base set of objectives that they publish in the documentation, but all of these mission objectives are meant to be customized and tailored for your organization, right? So here we can see some standard objectives like maintaining safety, maintaining environmental safety, but then if we go down, we have specific things that have to do with this vertical, right? So obtaining timely vessel clearance. If we flip over to the smart grid profile, for those companies that are dealing with energy, we can see they have some objectives around maintaining power system reliability and power system resilience. So what I'm just trying to convey is that these objectives are supposed to be custom, right? They're supposed to be something that you come to a conclusion with your stakeholders, right? So we're going to need to sit down with some of our different security architects, maybe CTOs, and come up with a cohesive cybersecurity objective list of objectives. Luckily, if we are following a methodology or framework like TOGAF, we already have some concept of overall objectives for our enterprise architecture practice. So in Abacus, we can go in, just categorize those different objectives into the cybersecurity category, and then immediately start drawing those different analysis and insights from these to our NIST frameworks. So once we've defined our mission objectives, we can take these mission objectives and start mapping them to the relevant categories and subcategories, and then assessing the impact in our architecture. Right, so here you're seeing an example of this. We've gone in, taken the subcategories, mapped them to an objective, and started prioritizing the impact of this. There are different ways that you can go in and apply this. Here we can see in another example for the smart grid profile that rather than starting with that impact scoring, we're just going in and identifying which one of these subcategories are going to be applicable to our objectives and which ones aren't. Right, so the one thing about these subcategories and categories is they're not meant to be a checklist for you to go through and check off every single activity for every single objective. Right, we're meant to apply and map the functions and categories with our specific goals and objectives and use only the ones that are relevant to us. So not every single category and subcategory will apply to your organization. So here we can see that mapping in Abacus. We're going in, taking some of those different objectives, mapping them to the categories that are relevant, and then we can go in and start assigning the impact scores on those different mappings, right? So we can go in and start saying, hey, if this isn't passed, it's going to be a low impact. We can leave any of those different mappings that don't exist off. And then we can do that same thing with the implementation tiers. So implementation tiers are going to be an assessment on how the organization views the cybersecurity risk and the processes currently in place to manage that risk. So it starts with tier 1, which is partial, meaning that those cybersecurity practices are not formalized and there is limited awareness at an organizational level, all the way up to tier 4, which is adaptive, meaning the organization adapts its cybersecurity practices based on previous and current cybersecurity activities. So assessing these tiers might be done quantitatively, it might be done qualitatively. It just depends on the specific subcategory and the specific objective. This might be driven by some data that we're getting from our different CMDBs and our applications. It might be just something that's related to processes that are in place. So we're going to take it on a case-by-case basis and assess these implementation tiers. So the next step is going to be assigning our specific controls here. So here you can see in that maritime profile, we've taken these different subcategories and we've used those informative references that we were looking at to go in and create a specific set of controls that need to be followed for each one of these different subcategories. Here we can see it in another example, right? So this is for electric vehicle fast charging. We, again, have our specific subcategories that we've gone in and chosen that are going to be included in our project. And now we have those mappings to the actual controls that need to be applied into our architecture. And then here we can see that in the Abacus side. So again, with Abacus's flexible meta model approach, you can go in and bring in any specific set of controls that we need to. So here we're seeing it tied to 853. If we needed to bring in 171, HIPAA, ISO 27000, all of those different things are going to be available for import and mapping in Abacus in our graph database. So we've gone in, we've connected the different subcategories to those specific controls. Now we can go in and start actually mapping those controls to our TOGAF enterprise architecture pieces, right? So here we can see all of those different logical application components. We've gone in and done some security scoring based off of those different controls and things that need to be applied and what is currently applied. We can go in and start looking at those different logical applications and their fulfillment in those different controls, right? So we can start talking about how we're currently achieving some of these different cybersecurity objectives. And then from there, we can start doing that downstream and upstream analysis into our enterprise architecture, right? So from a TOGAF perspective, if we wanted to drill down from those logical applications into those physical applications and physical technology components in the background, we can go in and start doing that downstream analysis. If we wanted to start looking upstream from the technologies and start viewing, okay, what are the processes that are related to these different technologies, and looking upstream from there, we can go in and start exploring all of those different dependencies. So with Abacus's graph-powered database, it makes it easy to go in and start viewing the actual impact in our architecture. So here we can flip to our NIST current state dashboard, where we can get an overall assessment of our NIST CSF posture. You can see some security scores that we've highlighted. So in Abacus, we have a no-code visual algorithm composer that allows you to create any sort of metric aggregation upstream or downstream across your architecture that you need. So we can go in and start creating our own custom calculated values that are going to be data-driven based off of those different relationships in our architecture. So here you can see some high-level security scores that we've gone in and created on those NIST cybersecurity functions. And these are going to be data-driven, right? We're looking at those applications that are in the background. We're looking at how we are achieving any of those different controls that these functions rely on in the background, and coming up with a security score here. We can then start using the dynamic filtering on our dashboard to start narrowing some of these different views down, right? So we can go in, start doing dependency analysis into our dashboard, and maybe we only want to see those different subcategories that are in a partial state. We can go in and start applying some of these different filters and getting narrowed views into our architecture. We can start doing that downstream and upstream analysis, right? So here I can go in and start exploring everything from that NIST perspective. But then as we keep drilling down here, you'll see that we're actually getting to that technology level, right? We're able to go in and drill down into that TOGAF side of our architecture. We're looking at those logical application components. We can drill down into those physical applications and physical technologies and things that are reliant in the background. We can go in and start applying different color schemes to our graph views, right? So here you can see we're showing some color markers to show the different server statuses and things like that. So we can start overlaying details of information on top of our different views and start analyzing our cybersecurity posture. So as a cybersecurity architect or a cybersecurity manager, you could use these different views to start drilling down into those high risk areas. We can go down into our objectives and start viewing those different objectives that have the lowest cybersecurity score. And then from there, we can immediately start drilling down into those different categories that are related and the technologies that are related from there. So we can do that full upstream and downstream analysis. So everything we've been talking about so far has been about building up that current state. In Abacus, we also have the ability to go in and very easily create target states and scenario architectures, right? So we can do that with a couple clicks. And now we can go through all of those different same activities where we're going in and assessing implementation tiers and things like that. But instead of our current implementation tier, we are looking for our target implementation, right? So this is what we want our cybersecurity posture to look like. So we can go in very easily, create that target state. We can start modeling out the actual differences in our architecture that are going to be needed, right? So we might need to implement new technologies. We might need to change processes. So we can use our digital twin target state to go in and start modeling out all of those different future state scenarios. And then we can start doing gap analysis on those different architectures. All right, so here we can see where those biggest gaps lie in between our current state and our target state. We can start looking at the scoring between those and again, drilling down into what are those actual technologies, what are those actual business capabilities that are relevant to our analysis here, and start viewing all of those upstream and downstream dependencies.